my privilege to be your facilitator today. And I want to recognise that I join you myself from the lands of the Ngunnawal people that were on their lands today, and to acknowledge their leaders and elders past, present and emerging. This land was never ceded, and I pay my respects to all those. And the respect is at the heart of what our discussion is about today. Respect is the key to the conversation we're going to have about the voice to Parliament, and one that I ask all of us to honour in the way that we participate in today's event, because it's only by listening and talking to each other that we will make progress on this particular issue. And we have the finest people to help us do that, because today we are joined by a number of speakers who have been taking this conversation around the country tirelessly, patiently, articulately, and winning hearts and minds to the discussion, and are sure to be successful when referendum day comes. But before we introduce Thomas and Lara, who are going to be in conversation with me and Alex throughout today's discussion, I would like to introduce Alex Classens, who is from the Rtbu. He's part of the National Executive of the Rtbu. He's the New South Wales Secretary of the esteemed union, and he's here to talk to us about why it's important to the union and to all union members to be part of this discussion and part of this historic opportunity. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Francis, and thank you all for joining us here today for this very important event. And just letting everyone know, of course, that because it is so important, we're going to actually record everything today, and then we'll be putting it up on the Rtbu Express for repeated viewing for those people who are doing shift work and not available to join us here at this time of the day. Obviously, I'm Alex Classens. I'm the Secretary of the Rail, Tram and Bus Union in New South Wales. And I'd like to start, as we always do our meetings, by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands on which we meet today. And I want to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Today, of course, I'm sitting on Gadigal land, but we know, of course, that we've got people from all over the state with us here today, and, we want you to acknowledge that. As Francis had already mentioned, we're going to introduce some really important guests here today, but to kick things off, I just want to give everybody an overview about why we're here as the Rtbu and why this is important to us. As we all know, the referendum for the voice to Parliament is going to be held towards the end of the year. And today's event is, as always, is designed to try and bring you information that you need so that you can be fully informed when you get to the ballot box. We're not actually here to tell you today how to vote, but we're here to make sure that when you do vote, you do it armed with all of the right information. And as some of us have already had the pleasure of listening to Thomas and others talk, we want everybody else to get to share that knowledge as well. So that's why we're doing this event today. So our guests, like I said, will do a better job than I can in explaining what the voice actually means and why it's so important for our country as a whole. But first, I want to explain why it's so important to us as a union. As we know, the Rtbu National Executive and our own New South Wales Branch Council in March, made up of over 40 rank and file members and delegates, we endorsed our support for the voice to Parliament, and this endorsement was unanimous. And the reason why is because the union, as a union, our union in particular, recognises that fairness and respect is union business. As a union movement, we exist to give workers, people, a voice. We do it every single day without even realising it. We insist that before employers make decisions that affect us as workers, that they come and talk to us, they speak to us, they listen to us. It's a really simple ask, really, but we know it makes the world of difference when we actually realise that somebody's actually listening to us. And as unionists, we know that the collective voice and consultation is very important to all of us. Our union especially knows what happens when those at the top, without any experience at all in our work, make decisions about us and our industry without talking to us. We've had a number of years in that experiencing exactly that. So we do everything we can to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard and, more importantly, listened to. It's the core of who we are as the Rtbu. It's core to the union movement as a whole. We also know why it's important that conditions that guarantee consultation with those impacted are enshrined, be it in an enterprise agreement, as we always do, or elsewhere, so that our members' hard-fought conditions can't be changed at the whim of the boss, or more importantly, a government of the day. Those union principles are exactly the same principles that underpin the voice. It's simply about finally recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our 122-year-old constitution, and for them to be consulted when it comes to laws and policy making that directly affect their community. It's not that much to ask. The Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is where the voice comes from, is an invitation from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to the Australian people to walk together in solidarity. And solidarity, as we all know, is union business. I am proud that our union joins others across the country in wholeheartedly accepting that invitation. And in that spirit, I'll definitely be supporting and voting yes. But I'm now going to hand over back to Francis and the team and let them do what they do best. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So beautifully put. As unionists, we couldn't agree more with your sentiments expressed there, and how the synergy between this campaign and the values that we hold as unionists runs very true, and that's why we are so passionate about it as well. We are with two esteemed colleagues who have walked every step of this journey, and there are many more miles to go. Who are going to be key to the success of this, and they're going to talk us through why it's so important. Lara is with us this afternoon. Lara Watson, who's the ACTU Indigenous Officer, and she joins us from which part of Australia? Which land are you on today, Lara? Hello.
Oh, I'm at home on Yagara country, so pay my respects.
And the wonderful Thomas Mayo as well, who is the Assistant National Secretary at the MUA, but Thomas has also been one of the tireless campaigners on the Voice campaign for a number of years now, and continues to put one foot in front of the other and speak to every available Australian to make them understand why this matters so much. Hello, Thomas.
I on Gadigal country, they respect the country as well.
We're going to jump into the conversation. This conversation only happens with you as well. So what we are using is a very special feedback tool. It's going to pop up now. There it is, to help us get an understanding of your views and any questions that you might have today. Now, for those using a laptop, grab your mobile and use that QR code on the screen. Or click on the link in the chat. There's a chat box here as well. And that way you can join the Zoom from your mobile. From the link will be in the chat. You can ask the questions. You can respond to anything that's being said. And it's all about getting your understanding as well. Click directly through the link that's in the chat box and participate in this conversation, because it is a conversation. So jump on, let us know that you are there by hitting the heart button. Instead, there's a few hearts popping up there. And if you're also coming into this conversation about the Voice for the first time, maybe give us a 1 to 5 on how you're feeling about your knowledge on the Voice at the moment. You feel like you're full bottle on it, you've got a great understanding of all the issues, and that you're ready to go when it comes to talking to and convincing those in your family and friends and other people in your life about why it matters, because it's those voices, it's your voice that's going to carry this conversation. Or are you starting from the starting line, which is fine, because that's what we're here to do, is to help you understand why it matters and give you the tools that you need to have those conversations to help us win this particular referendum, which is so important to the country and, you know, can change lives significantly. So let's jump into the conversation now, as we've got a 3.5. That's not too bad, Thomas and Lara, in terms of understanding of the Voice, but we've got a bit of work to do. So let's do that work. So starting with the first question, the fundamental question: what is the Voice? So, you know, most big ideas have a foundational story, and the Voice is the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is just the most magnificent piece of writing that I've read in the last 30 or 40 years here in Australia. And I want to introduce Thomas, who has written a number of terrific books about the statement, to maybe talk to us a little bit about what it is, and you know, why the words matter so much, and maybe even read it for us, Thomas, as well. You know, give us a little bit of a history of representation for Parliament, Thomas, before we get to you reading the Voice for us.
Yeah,
or the statement. Sorry.
I'd just like to also acknowledge the comrades at the Rtbu and our solidarity from the MUA, and that introductory talk by Alex was just brilliant, I think. to understand, firstly, I think, and it saves me from describing this, but what a voice is, right? It's just a collective of people, common interests, common goals, and how we work together, which is why throughout the history of our struggle as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to have some dignity and respect and justice, we have often come together in these moments in times that you can see on your screen here. In the 1930s, there was a gathering of Aboriginal leaders that made a petition to the King. In the 1960s, there was Yirrkala bark petitions. The Yolngu people came together, talked about how they would protect country, put this petition together and addressed it to the federal parliament. The next one that you see is the Larrakia petition to the Queen, Larrakia people, and then the Barunga statement. And actually the graphics are the wrong way around for those two. Actually, I just noticed. And so, these were moments where Indigenous people came together, had debate and discussion, talked about what important steps forward were, and made these petitions and statements. This isn't an exhaustive list, but in common for all of these statements and petitions is that they all called for a voice or political representation. And we know that we need a voice. Throughout this history, when we have established voices either by our own means or convincing the government to do so, we have made great progress. We have seen improvements in our communities, improvements to our lives. But when we have lost our voice, so every time we've established one, another government has come along and silenced it. So under one government it's established, the next one takes it away. And we know that things get worse when that happens. And so in the absence of a voice, let's talk about one of the most recent ones. It was the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, established because the Barunga statement called for it. Bob Hawke was a Prime Minister. He established the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, or ATSIC. ATSIC did some great work. It was making vast improvements in our communities, though it also had its problems. Like all organisations will have, even unions have problems from time to time. But what we do is elect different leaders, with democracy, should we need to. We update our rules to close loopholes or to improve how members are represented. All organisations have problems from time to time. But ATSIC was not allowed to deal with those problems. Howard became the Prime Minister. He went about destroying it and he silenced it with a simple majority in Parliament with the Labor Latham opposition support and silenced that voice. Then we saw, in the absence of that voice, the Northern Territory intervention in 2007, which was, for those that don't know, to succinctly describe it, it was a Howard suspended the Racial Discrimination Act, Northern Territory, to do what he did, which was basically completely disempower Indigenous people, made out that the social problems in the communities were an Aboriginal problem. And we know today that for hundreds and hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, it made things worse in those communities, because by the name intervention, you can tell it was not done with Indigenous people. It made things worse. The gap has widened since the destruction of that voice. And so we considered all of the lessons from the past, voices established, voices silenced, statements and petitions that have been ignored, and came together around the country to consider those lessons. We made, at the final convention in the heart of the nation at Uluru, the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is a consensus of our people, Indigenous people, that calls for a voice to Parliament enshrined in the Constitution. And so that's how we get to this moment. Just to finish, Francis, a lot of hard work by Indigenous people to learn lessons, to create these lessons by trying things, to work hard to bring those lessons together, to reach a consensus, because as we know as union members, coming together on tough issues is hard to do, but we do it through hard work and listening to each other and respecting each other. A lot of hard work then. 6 years we have fought for this opportunity because the Turnbull government almost immediately dismissed the proposal. And so I hope that you understand here that this opportunity that we have to vote on a voice is not a Albanese idea or a Labor Party idea or a union idea. This is an idea that comes from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with all those lessons and all of that hard work.
Thomas, thanks for taking us on that very long journey, an important journey to understand why and how we've got to this particular point. And that journey crystallised, as we know, in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that remarkable document, that remarkable open-hearted invitation to all of us to change history and change the course of our nation. And now, using the Menti tool that we showed you before, I'm going to ask Thomas to read that statement to us. And I just want you to find one word that comes to mind when you hear the words that Thomas reads and the intent of the document, something that sums up how you feel about it and what it means to you. And we'll sort of have a little word map on the screen. But Thomas, I'd like to invite you now to share with us the beauty of the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Thank you, Francis. We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion, the ancestral tie between the land or Mother Nature and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who born therefrom, remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished, and it coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise? That a peoples possessed the land for 60 millennia and this sacred link should disappear from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionately, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alien from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish, they will walk into worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. It's such every time it takes my breath away. That wonderful piece of writing that is the basis of what we are doing here today. It is the basis of this journey towards a voice. And we want to hear from you using the Menti tool that you've got there, the word that comes to mind, that springs to mind for you, that triggers for you when you hear Thomas read that statement. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But I want to go to Lara now. We're having a look at it now, some of the words that are popping up: hopeful, powerful, beautiful, invited, which is such an extraordinary thing when you think about the history of this country, that invitation is still being extended despite everything that has happened. It's quite humbling. Lara, for you, when you hear Thomas read it, and like Thomas, you probably heard it hundreds and hundreds of times, but how do you feel when you hear that statement being read?
Hope is probably the biggest one for myself. I know Thomas would have read that off the top of his head too. I haven't got to that point. I cannot read it off the top of my head. The brother's been very active and campaigning, for 5 years now. So hats off, brother. You've done a really, really good job. But the Uluru Statement is absolutely a powerful document. It has been designed to be read out loud because we do have an oral history. It is critically important for people to really understand what it is saying, and that it is an invitation. Like, you don't need permission to participate, and we need people to get over their fear of offending and know that you have a place here when we're campaigning for yes. Like, everyone's going to have their own journey, and people have their own reasons in why they want to participate in the campaign. But at the end of it, when we get a successful yes up, as a nation, we have created a better future for our kids and our grandkids, and a very united future, not a divided one.
That's the goal, and that's why it was going to require everybody to be involved in those conversations with people in their lives, to take them on that journey wherever they're starting from. There's still time for them to come on the journey with us. But it is about process. There's no doubt about that. And we do have to dive into the nuts and bolts of how we get this done. It's not good enough just to feel that it needs to happen. We need to make it happen, and that happens through a process. And once we understand the context of a referendum, we need to also understand how we go about the invitation that it embodies to establish the voice. We need to change the constitution, which history shows us in this country is very tough to do, but it's not impossible. It can be done. It can be done. So let's have a civics lesson. I'm going to throw it over to Lara. I think he's going to talk us through the mechanics of the referendum and what it entails, Lara.
Yeah. So what is a constitution? The constitution is a document that basically outlines the structures and powers of the Australian government. So it's kind of like their rule book, right? That's what they got to adhere to when it comes to policy and procedures in this country. So it was voted on in 1901, and Australia became a federation under the monarchy, and that was when the Constitution was first endorsed and has been there ever since. There are other referendums that have looked at changing the Constitution. And as you said, Francis, it's very, very hard to win a referendum to make those changes. But there are some changes, or there are some clauses within the Constitution that we often hear in our campaigning, that people feel that there should be no special circumstances for any race within the Constitution, and that they don't believe in a race power. Well, that already sits in our Constitution currently. So in the Constitution, it has a race power that allows governments to make policies and laws for particular races. Like, they have that power. Doesn't say Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but this is where the white Australian policy was implemented. And if people aren't aware of the white Australian policy, this wasn't just around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It was basically anyone of colour was not permitted to come into Australia. So it is a very old document, and while a very controversial document, and it absolutely does need some constitutional change, so that everyone living in Australia has that capacity to feel like they're included, and can call Australia home. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not included within the Constitution or have that capacity. So the difference between Constitution and legislation, as I said before, the Constitution is basically the outline. So if you get a book or a report, there's a table of content. So the Constitution is basically the content of what government needs to adhere to. They then have the capacity to make legislation, which has the detail and the ins and outs of how that will work. So the Constitution is the power base for government to make laws, but then the legislation is what does that law entail, what does it do, and how does it get rolled out. So the purpose in why we are asking for constitutional change, one, is to be recognised as the first peoples of this country and to have a voice to government, because what we've seen previously is government, when it's legislated, will come in, change of government, defund, and it disappears. So, and we've sent plenty of petitions to government, plenty of petitions to Monarch. This is the first time that we are really asking the Australian people to embrace the oldest living culture in the world, and to recognise us within the Constitution. Very difficult to win a referendum to change the Constitution. So what you need is a double majority. And what that is you've got to win 6 out of the 4 states when it comes to voting, and then a national vote. So the Northern Territory and the ACT fall under the national vote. So if we only win 5 states, we've lost the referendum. 3 states, we've lost the referendum. So we need 4 states, at least 4 states, and then also the national vote. So very hard, but not unachievable.
Thank you, Lara. Yeah, it's not unachievable.
I'm trying to think, what else do you need to know? You also need to write yes. It's not a tick, it's not a cross when you go to the ballot box. So you have to actually write the word. Unless someone's voting no, then they can just cross if they want.
Yeah, it's going to be a beautiful moment to be able to write yes when we do get that opportunity. That's for certain. Thomas, well, let's narrow it down to what the actual ask is. So, because people are going to be looking at a piece of paper and there's going to be some words on it. That's the ask. Rubber's going to hit the road when we have to actually look at the ask.
Yes. So there's the ask is basically a question, yes or no. You know. Should we have an alteration to the Constitution to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, so First Peoples, by establishing a voice, words to that effect. And so there will be 92 words that are inserted into the Constitution, should we succeed. And basically those words are in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the First Peoples. 1, there shall be an Aboriginal, a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. 2, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice may make representations on matters relating to the Parliament and Executive Government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And 3, the Parliament shall decide all matters relating to the Voice, including the composition, functions, powers and procedures of the Voice. So to summarise that, what we're saying yes or no to, as Lara said, the principle in the Constitution that Indigenous people should be recognised and that they should have a say when decisions are made about them. It is that simple. That is all the detail to what you are saying yes or no to. What the voice will look like is guided by these design principles. So firstly, we have the referendum. The Australian people accept the principle that Indigenous people should be recognised and heard. Then the government will go to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and ask us how that should be done. So what the model will be. In other words, how many representatives, what the region's borders are for, what the electorates are, all those types of things. These design principles guide all of that. That the voice will be independent, given independent advice to the Parliament and government. It'll be accountable and transparent. It'll work alongside existing organisations and traditional structures. The voice will be chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people based on the wishes of local communities. And on it goes. There are other design principles similar to these that just give people an understanding of what shape it'll take. But those two on the right are important. The voice won't have funds to deliver services. It will not have that function. It will be purely about advising the government on policies and laws to help them to get those things right, because they never have before without our input. And also it won't have a veto power. So in other words, it cannot force anything on the Parliament or government. As I said, it's advisory. And that's the simplest answer to any of the fear mongering you might hear about losing your backyard or losing your farm, or, the voice suddenly deciding what parking fines should be and all that sort of rubbish. The voice cannot decide any of those things, can only decide who its representatives are and what advice they give. That's it.
Thank you, Thomas. And if you've got any questions, once again, use the Menti app or the chat room function on the Zoom call as well to fire questions through. We can put those to Lara and Thomas as well, particularly around the process and how it's going to work. As you saw there, any detail, if there's any questions you've got, that's what we're here for. We're here for a conversation, so make sure you ask them. So let's start with that sovereignty question as well. One of the things that's been, central to some of the misinformation here in the campaign. Now, Lara, will this process extinguish Indigenous sovereignty as some fear?
No. I didn't support this from day one because of those questions around treaty and sovereignty. But I went and sourced my answers. So Tony McAvoy is an Aboriginal constitutional lawyer. And basically the only way that we can lose our sovereignty is if we give it up ourselves. So the way if you get into government, this is a good example. So say Lydia Thorpe, right? So she's elected into Parliament and she swears a sovereignty to the Queen, as they do in Parliament. That's the way that you can give up your sovereignty, right? So no one will lose their sovereignty unless they give it up themselves. It's really hard for people to comprehend the legalities of that and how I come to my decision in and around why this is so vitally important. I said to myself, who would I give my sovereignty up for, right? And I would definitely give it up for those 8-year-old and 15-year-old kids in remote communities that have no hope and are committing suicide. I'd give up my sovereignty to see that addressed and stopped. I'd give up my sovereignty for our elders who are passing with pain in their hearts and not being acknowledged of the injustices that have happened in this country. So no, our sovereignty will not be affected, but if people don't understand that, then have a look at what you would give your sovereignty up for.
Let's talk about the challenges we face here to convince those who are either wavering or, at the moment are saying no to writing yes on that piece of paper when that day comes. It's important that we talk about the tough discussions that we need to have. And we want to hear once again, if anyone's got any questions or reasons why they're wavering with their position on this and want to put it up on the Menti app and we can talk to it, or in the chat group. It's important we listen to those concerns, and this is a conversation that has to be done with respect and with patience with some people. So we need to be, dealing with these issues. Lara, one of the ones that is often raised is, will having a voice to Parliament make a practical difference? Will it change the reality for people in their day-to-day lives?
It will, because it gives us that very foundation that we've never had before that we can actually work from. So there needs to be a lot more work done, but this is our first step. We're asking Australia to give us that foundation so that we can absolutely get the work done that we need to get done to address our issues. Because the only way that's going to happen is if we do have a seat at the table. You know, it's like, you know, EB time comes up. You run around, you see, make sure everyone's in the union, you get together, you have a meeting, you elect your delegate, you get a log of claims, and then you go in and negotiate with the boss. This is the same, exactly the same for us. You know, we want a seat at the table so that we can absolutely address the issues that we know how to fix. We know what our issues are. We just want an opportunity to give government some advice on the best way that they can approach it.
Thomas, one of the other arguments often put by people who are objecting to the voice or wavering on it is that it might create one set of rights for one group of Australians over another.
Yeah, no, this isn't special rights for Indigenous people. It just it enhances our democracy, is basically how the Solicitor General described it. And the way it enhances our democracy is that we have Indigenous people who have been here for 60,000 years that haven't been recognised, and it's about time we do that. But we do it in a way that gives us an opportunity to be heard, and we need to be heard because there is a specific, there are decisions made about Indigenous people. There are specific laws and policies under the race power that Lara described, but they have failed us. They have not been able to close the gap just this year. The Closing the Gap report showed that 4 of the targets were getting worse. We were getting worse in a number of ways, and that's just not good enough. That in Australia, a first world country, we have Indigenous Australians still living in third world conditions without clean water, that we have a life expectancy gap for Indigenous people where we expected to die around 8 years younger than other Australians. The suicide rates are twice as high. As the Uluru Statement says, proportionately, the most incarcerated people on the planet are here in Australia, in this country, Indigenous peoples. And so a voice is a really important way to be able to address that. And we've got to do it, you know. Yeah, sorry, got a bit sidetracked. What was the original question?
No, that's fine. I think you answered the original question just fine, Thomas. I give people a chance also to, on the Menti app, the app that you're using, to rate those objections, if any of them ring true for you, or if you feel that some of them you know, still have to be addressed. We'd like you to give us a sense of that as well. Use the app or go to the chat room on the Zoom call and let us know how you feel about that. Got a couple of questions coming through from people who are part of the call. Lara, one is the cost related? Will this be a really expensive exercise? And one of the arguments we've heard a lot is, I'll put this one to Lara, another bureaucracy. I heard one politician talk about a $300,000 job for people on The Voice. This is just going to be another fat cat's party for bureaucrats and for the moneyed class. I think the phrase I heard one politician use in relation to The Voice.
Yeah, it's not about any new money. I mean, if you have a look, trade union movement took up the fight for community development program workers. Now, the government was spending $320 million just to administrate that program that was extremely racist and harmful to remote communities. So it's a bit more around how do you spend the money better and make sure that it actually reaches the ground and where it's needed to be able to address these issues. So, of course, people want to make sure that their taxpaying dollars go to something that it's meant to go to. Well, I think having our say in and around, letting government know where it needs to go, that money that's been allocated already will be better used and utilised and actually reach the ground to address those issues that they need to address.
Yeah,
Thomas, Another question that's come through is one that I'll direct to you from one of our participants. And not all Aboriginal people are agreeing with the approach to the voice. So, it's obviously, what do we make of that? And if the common question, and I've been out campaigning, everyone who's been campaigning has had this, well, if Aboriginal people can't agree on it, how do I vote yes?
Yes, well, firstly, we're not homogenous. We're like any other group of Australians. We have different opinions, different perspectives, different experiences that shape those opinions. And so it is completely normal. If we were to wait for 100% of Indigenous people to agree with something before we move forward, we would never move forward, okay? What you can rely on is that process that I described that led to the making of the Uluru Statement. And I can tell you, I think that if we had 10 times as much resources and 10 times as many Indigenous people involved in that process, then, we would have reached the same outcome. That we need a voice, we understand that as union members, and we need to protect it because we can't ignore the lessons from the past that they've always been silenced before. This is also, you can rely on the polls. There have been a number of polls that have been done. All of them indicate over 80% support from Indigenous people. They're not small samples, especially the most recent one was not a small sample, as some are saying, because you've got to remember we're only 800,000 people here being polled, not 16 million, that you want to get an idea of. So those polls are reliable, and I would say this, that it would be well over 80%. I'd say into the 90% of Indigenous people that support this now, because we have been doing a lot of work. We finally had some resources to get into community and make sure mob understand, and I reckon it'll be much higher than 80% support now.
Alex Classens, I might invite you back in here because this one relates to the union and to its involvement in the campaign. And thank you for your questions. Keep them coming through via the Menti app or via the chat group because they really do help inform the conversation. Alex, this is for you. Are the RTBU being paid to promote the yes vote?
Absolutely not. That's just absolutely ridiculous. No, look, our democratic processes have endorsed it. We were fortunate enough to have Thomas come and talk to our branch council. This is, like I've said, union business. We're always about supporting society, supporting people and the fundamental right of people having a say. And it's just ridiculous to suggest that we're getting paid to do it. That's not what unions do. That's just not how we operate.
And one other question for you while we've got you back, Alex. Will it unite or divide us as a nation? What's your sense of as someone who's been around the block a few times and been on many a campaign, about uniting people and also having to deal with divisive arguments?
Look, I think once we get to the point where people vote to support it and we do get it in the Constitution, I think it'll definitely unite people. It's a wound that needs fixing, and the only way it can be fixed is by listening to the people that it directly affects. And this is the way to do it. Recognise the right of these, our Indigenous people who were here a long time before any of us, and let them have a say in their affairs. Has to be a thing that has to be done. And once it's done, then maybe we can fix a lot of other things as well, but we've got to start. And it's been talked about for way too long. We need action.
Yeah, we're divided now. I mean, we've always been excluded from the system that governs this country. So you can't, we're already divided. This is about coming together and being a better nation and having, people really embrace a culture that is theirs as well, because they live on country. Yeah. Like embrace it, don't walk across the street from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do we make history? That's our challenge. That's what we're going to do next. Let's maybe have a little word map up here. We'll throw the screen open here and have a look at a few options here. Firstly, what your level of understanding is for the voice after the conversation that we've just heard. From on 1 to 5, do you feel like you're closer to understanding what it's all about and being able to explain to others in your life about why it's important to vote yes? Secondly, whether you're actually planning to support the voice. If a referendum was held today, would you vote yes? And finally, let us know your enthusiasm for getting actively involved in the campaign, because it's one thing to sit on the call and have a conversation here, but really this will be one house to house, conversation to conversation, person to person, and it's going to take people of goodwill to get out there and have those conversations. So we'll maybe get you to have a look at that in a moment and see where you feel and how that all sits for you at the moment. Lara, talk to us about what the union movement's been doing when it comes to the campaign, and what your sense of the progress has been made, and the general mood amongst members and people in their lives.
Yeah, so our referendum plan was put together by the ACTU Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Committee. So the Unions for Yes campaign is being led by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander union members, as well as non-Indigenous union members. We have 3 phases. So we spent pretty much a good portion of the year in and around education. So we have developed some courses. There was the Voice Treaty Truth course that Thomas and I developed in 2020 through COVID. We'd run, I think it was over 3,000 people through that course. In the first half of the education process, we've got campaign conversation. So over 3,000 union members have gone through that as well. We've got handling objections and how to be a good ally. And what we found through that first phase is that there was a lot of misconception and people who just didn't know what was going on, or what a referendum was, or how it works. We're actually into our action phase now, so there is a calendar that's been put together. Trade unions have developed their own referendum plans and are rolling that out through their own membership workplaces and communities in which their members live in. So you will start to see a bit more saturation of Unions for Yes, and people on the ground, or the door knocking, persuasion phone calls, letterboxing, all that sort of stuff is happening now. And then we will launch into our 3rd phase, which will operate and run pretty much like a federal election campaign. So like a 33-day campaign where it's just pure saturation. But one thing that I think is going to be really, really exciting is if you look out there and you have a look at trade unions, civil society groups, even corporates, we are all going to come together because we all support yes, so that we are all covered, every single polling booth and pre-poll in this country, with one how to vote. Now, if that's not uniting a country, I don't know what is.
It's an exciting campaign. There's a lot of work ahead, but it's going to gain some serious momentum. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to talk to Thomas in a moment just about how we can be part of that campaign. We've got a few late questions coming in, and we're always keen to answer those questions, so let's get to them. And I'll put this one to you, Thomas. What safeguards do you think are going to be in place to ensure the Voice Committee remains accountable to those local communities that send those people to be part of the Voice?
Yeah, it'll be our voice ourselves. So we're always going to advocate to improve how we're represented, just like members of unions do. We're always working towards improving how our union represents our members. So much the same, in much the same way, we're going to be advocating to improve how the voice works. It's that simple.
And Lara, another question that's come through as well. The Voice is about Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's going to be their voice. So why are non-Indigenous people voting on this? Is this once again non-Indigenous people dictating and having too much control over the future of First Nations people?
Yeah. Well, one, we're only 3% of the nation. So we're only, 900,000 of us, and we need 15 million people to vote yes to be able to get our foundation in place to do the work. But also it's about coming together. It's about being included. It's about working together for a better future for everyone, not just us. And I know some people are a bit upset, like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, around non-Indigenous people voting. This is it, right? Like, we can't exclude anyone. If I have a look at my logo, like, I had a serpent in that, but what I knew is that there are other minority groups watching this campaign very closely because they also feel excluded. And I knew in some of those cultures a serpent was an evil omen. So I took it out because it's about us all coming together. You know, the work in and around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues That will come after this, yes. We're just asking for people to recognise us in the Constitution. We can do the work afterwards, but together we need to vote yes so that we have that foundation to do the work.
Thomas, just for you, a question that I need to ask you is, how do we have those conversations with people that are wavering, that aren't either don't understand or are still struggling to come to terms with what the voice is about?
Yeah, firstly, I want to ask everybody that's watching this to have conversations. If you support this, please work systematically through everybody you could possibly speak with and help to understand what this important moment in our history is about, what a yes vote means. So please have those conversations. The way you do it is to have respectful conversations. So listen, be respectful if there is a funny idea or a difference of opinion. And when you listen, you're able to better understand what information someone needs to be able to address any concerns that they might have. If they are supporters, then please ask them to do exactly what you're doing and to have conversations with everybody that they can influence. That's very important. If someone is offensive or racist or harmful, then don't waste your time with them. Move on, look after yourself, find someone that that you can have a good conversation with and bring on board. There's resources on the yes23.com.au website, and the Unions for Yes campaign has resources for union members. So please use those. There's also a book that I've written with Kerry O'Brien called The Voice to Parliament Handbook, all the details you need. It's inexpensive and it's a great way to move people. There's plenty of anecdotes of people moving from no to yes after reading it, and it's only about an hour and a half to read.
It's so important, isn't it, also to believe that you can shift people. I think one of the tools that the No campaign are running is trying to erase or shave off people's belief that they can actually change people's opinion or take people on that journey. Like, it's just too hard, and it's like a voter suppression tactic. They think if it's just too hard, people won't try, and if we won't try, we're not going to get it done.
And that's part of what these polls are about. They're about taking away our confidence, and they don't reflect what the community is saying. When we're out on the train stations and doing door knocking, there's great curiosity. There's great support. There's many Australians that still don't even know this referendum is coming. So the other bit of advice that I have for you is to have those conversations, and you'll be surprised how many people will just need to hear from someone that they trust or they love, to say, look, I've looked into this. I understand what it's about. It's safe. It's meaningful. I'm voting yes. I'd like you to vote yes too. You'll just shift a lot of people just by having that conversation.
And imagine how powerful that is when you've won an extra vote every time you speak to someone. It's a wonderful thing to do. Alex, from the RTBU's perspective, as you said, this reflects union values, and it's core union business to come together in solidarity with people. So what have you guys been doing in particular?
Well, I mean, this is obviously part of the work that we've been doing. I mean, we've got a campaign director working almost exclusively on running this campaign and trying to make sure that all the resources are available out there. So for those people who want to get more involved, please contact the office, talk to the campaign director. We've got some copies of the book coming from, we've ordered a whole bunch of them. So we're happy to hand those out to those people who are going to go away and have those positive one-on-one conversations that, that is something we can actually learn from our Indigenous brothers and sisters, is that conversation, the storytelling. It's something that a lot of us have learnt over many years of experience, that the best way you can influence people is having a proper, respectful conversation, like Thomas said. And it's very easy to make outrageous allegations and make a lot of noise. Yeah. It's a much more important thing to do, to sit down, respectfully listen, do your homework, get the information, and then go and have those one-on-one conversations, because they are the ones that are going to shift the way in which people think. That's the conversation that's always going to stick in somebody's memory. When they go to the ballot box and they pick up that pencil, they're going to remember that really important conversation they've had. And hopefully we'll all be in a position to be part of some tremendous moment in history, of Australian history, where we actually change things for the good and for the better. And that's what we're hoping this will achieve.
There is a lot of misconceptions and propaganda out there. You know, people who aren't supporting yes. There's the slogan, if you don't know, vote no. And it's easy to create confusion with misconception and lies. Like the AEC has started a register that it's that bad. But what I'm saying is if you don't know, get in the know. There's lots of resources. Any yes campaign is backed on facts. You can find out for yourself, but it's very, very simple. It's not complicated. If you believe Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should be recognised in our constitution, vote yes. If you believe that everyone has a right to have a say on matters that affect their lives, vote yes. It's that simple.
Well, the campaign is up and running and it can't succeed without you. And I'm talking to people in wherever you are. Those conversations you have are so important to solidify yes supporters and get them excited to talk to friends. It's a multiplier effect. The more we do it, the more other people do it. It's like a wave. It will carry us to victory. And also convincing those who are not yet over the line. We need to walk with them on this journey as well to make the right decision on behalf of the nation. So what you can do in the chat box, there are a couple of links that you can click on straight away to get involved, including a link to the RTBU itself by clicking here in that chat box to the rtbuexpress.com.au and the rest of it to be involved in the RTBU campaign. We've also put the yes23.com.au link in there as well to get involved there. Sign up there. This is how you keep involved with events and campaign events in your community. It is a grassroots community event program that is going to be rolled out from town to town, from street to street, city to city to make it happen. The campaign is all about giving you the tools to build that capacity in our community wherever you are. Creating a roster, hand out flyers at the local supermarket or school or the railway station, have the conversations that Alex talked about. The really simple stuff like putting a sticker on your car or wearing a T-shirt like the one that Thomas has got the fabulous hoodie on, the Yes hoodie there. Print out the copy of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and ask people to read it, because once they do, they'll never be the same. It will change lives doing that. You don't need to be a constitutional lawyer to be a campaign support. You just need to be prepared to accept the invitation at the core of the statement and go out and have those conversations. And waking up, Thomas and Lara, I want your reaction to the day after the referendum is held. And I'm going to dream big and say we have a yes vote. What's it going to mean to you, Lara? I'll start with you.
I'll cry. I will really cry. I mean, the work that I've been doing through the ACTU and having just the privilege to be able to visit and work with remote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, like, you know, the hope that they have on what this will deliver is incredible, because you've got communities that don't even have access to clean water, like fresh drinking water. Like, there are really like third world conditions. So for me, I'm just going to be so overwhelmed knowing that, you know, all those remote communities and our elders and the people that have come before us, and because we do stand on the shoulders of giants. It'll be true reconciliation, and it'll make a very united nation, and together we can build a better future for everyone.
Thomas?
Yeah, same as Lara. I mean, yeah, from the heart, it'll just feel like our country has made a massive leap forward, a great healing, and I'll feel peace, I think. A lot of work to be done, but we'll be able to get it done with a voice. Thank you.
And Alex?
Yeah, look, I really hope that we do vote yes. I think all of those words that have already been said are right. I think Thomas has correctly summed it up. It will be a massive healing for our country. It will be a time for our country to grow, and we want to be part of that. Unions want to be part of that. Our union wants to be part of that. And again, I would encourage any of our members that want to be involved, support this campaign, go out and have those conversations, come and talk to us. We're here to help. And
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
I particularly want to thank you, Francis and Lara and Thomas. I know your time is extremely valuable. You're all out there doing the good work, but we really do appreciate it from the RTBU point of view. From our heart, we thank you for everything that you do and you continue to do for this cause, and we support you in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Just so you know, my father, who's Aboriginal, joined the railway at 12 years old as a bootlegger. And as soon as he was capable and old enough, he joined the union.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
So big softness in my heart for the RTBU.
We love that.
And on that beautiful note, I want to thank Lara, Thomas, Alex for being part of this. The links are still there in the chat. If you haven't clicked on one and become part of the campaign, do so. Have those conversations, walk with people on this journey, and we can make this happen. And like Lara and Thomas and Alex, we can wake up the day after the referendum and know we've changed our country. What a thought. What a thought. After everything we've been through. Let's get it done. I'm going to close this off now. Alex, it is going to be available as part of the RTBU's suite of campaigning, so people will go back and watch it, share the link with their friends if they haven't seen it, all that sort of stuff. So this is going to be available to everyone, and I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and wish you well, and go forth and let's win this bloody thing.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.